Greetings, welcome, hang in there. Greetings, welcome, hang in there. For me, it's already Saturday, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining here on TikTok Live. For me, like I said, it is now Saturday, August 6th, 2022. For you, depending on where you are on the globe, it may not be just yet. But hang on in there. Cool effect. Thought I'd try it out. May switch it out here in a second, but I'm digging it because this is the energy of where we're going after, we clear out all of the fuckery. But I think the title says what slavery did. And as I was sitting here, I did a mini session here on TikTok, but prior to that, I actually did a pretty intensive session through the Akashic Records. But after I did the little mini session, I was thinking about, slavery, being an African American descent, and think, just on my own personal path and journey and what I come to know and understand. See, on the African American culture, and I'm not saying, every ethnicity, background, creed, culture has its own set of fuckery. Believe that, okay? You can best believe that. Now, for the African American culture, the trauma of slavery, okay? The trauma, the drama, those ancestral wounds and imprints and what it did, okay? And the thing that came to mind right now, I'm sure there are many side effects of that, but what came to mind as I was just sitting and thinking, see, that's a trauma, okay? That is a trauma to a whole culture, to a whole race. It's a trauma, a very deep one. But within that trauma, there's something else that takes place. And this is what's been carried through. And this is why we see the dysfunctionality in a lot of African American family. Okay? So, African Americans, okay, taken from your native place, right? Stripped of everything. Human rights, dignities, reduced to the bare minimums, so forth. Watching, just so much malicious, heinous things to happen. But another side effect was it pushed even further the culture, even once we got out of slavery, okay, because it's still cellular data. It pushed the culture into fight, flight, and freeze and survival mode regarding one another as well. Okay? So one another, it became about that survival of the fittest, feeling threatened by everything, even your own resentment. You guys heard about the theories, I'm sure. I'm not sure how accurate these theories are, the light versus the dark within the culture, within its own culture, and those wounds that carry over and that aggression within the own culture, from women to women, men to women, different colors within the culture. And so the trauma is now subconsciously, until people wake up and heal and deal and stop putting band-aids on it and pretending like there's healing that they haven't really done. But then it's this driving, underlining, subtle force that looks at one another like a threat, especially depending on what categories you fall under. So again, with the light versus dark within the African American culture and the privileges that came with the lighter shades versus the darker shades, okay? Then the survival feeling like, because you're reduced to nothing. So everything become about the survival of the fittest, the animalistic nature that would cause one to betray one another. In the history of slavery, that was also done because individuals were trying to survive. And some didn't have the strength to hold character. Okay? There was a group of folks that had strength to hold character. Then there was a group of folks that didn't have strength to hold the character. And so they would sell out. This is where we get the sell out. They would sell out their own so that the master, or, so they can get the privileges, even if it meant, sacrifice the other and yada, yada. Okay? We think that stuff is done and over with, but you're seeing it play out right now in a very different way. It's that same, lack of morality due to fear and survival. So the culture being reduced to nothing, the threats, give me, sacrifice this person or it's you. Sacrifice this person or, you and your family is only going to have, you know what I'm saying? Well, whatever weird shit they were doing back then, some people caved and some people didn't. I mean, that's why you had the freedom movement and all that stuff. So there were people that stood for the truth and what was fair and right. And then there were people that felt compelled to cave in the name of, being able to have something and to, have their bowl of beans, that Esau energy, all for a bowl of beans. Okay. And believe it or not, that's what it's connected to. This is why I know we hear a lot of talk about a lot of things, but when we deal with it for real and not just because it's trending, when we deal with it for real and not just for appearance, then we get to the heart of the matter. This stuff has been being done a long time ago. Sell out for fame. See, this is the form that it's taken now. Back then, it was, for the bowl of beans. You're going to either give us this one for a slave, or you're going to let us have our way with this one, or you're going to let me take your wife here. All these little weird things, or, right? So now it's selling out for fame, fortune, goods, notoriety, but it's still a sellout. It's still the same energy. It still comes from trauma. It still comes from the drama, those deep core wounds. Okay? It is a win-lose mentality, right? That's still pushing people into that kind of an attitude. The only way I can win if I make them lose. You hear that? The only way that I can win is if I make them lose. This is what was taking place in slavery. If I want to survive and get, the favor of the master, if I want to get, the bowl of beans and the privileged seat and the master's, yada, yada, then I have to sell out something. I have to sell out my child. I have to sell out my wife, my husband. And I thought I would share that for some of y'all just to think about if you feel like, you've kind of gotten along the same lines of realizing that, all this toxicity within the African American culture and families, is to kind of do with all of that bullshit that is just, it's cellular data left unchecked generation after generation. And then because this is when organized religion kicked in for the African American culture, stripping away the culture's ability to think for themselves and to, it's all a program, man. But see, that's where it was taught to hide behind religion and to sit passively, okay, waiting for something to magically be different, but also to sell out, right? This is where all that desperation came from, willing to do anything. There was a ragtag group of few folks that did not bow to that. They were the freedom fighters. They were the revolutionaries. They were the people who died for the cause. They were the people who said, I ain't caving. This shit's fucked up. They died for the cause. They didn't want to sell out their children. They didn't want to sell out their, their husband, their wife, or whatever, for a bowl of beans for the week or for privilege in the master's house. And this is what people are doing now. I believe it very strongly. Even when it comes to like weird deaths and accidents of famous people and stuff, I feel like some of that stuff, especially with the Black culture, I feel like some of that stuff, they were sacrificed because their lazy family didn't targeted them, sacrificed them, and then want to go stand up and say something wonderful after them. And they didn't want to heal and sin and wake up, or they didn't take the path, or they didn't get there, or whatever. And, that sacrifice, I don't think so. But I believe that that's what has happened in history. And then everybody, just like I said, that's where all of that conditioning came from. And we're still doing it now, except for the ones that are waking up and healing. But this is why the ones that are waking up and healing are targeted so strongly. Because dealing with pain and trauma brings it up. All the illusions shatter. It's challenging to deal with. And it's quite, that escapism, that cognitive dissonance and depersonalization that the culture got ingrained in through that slavery. The DNA being passed on is cellular data. It's running through the subconscious until dealt with. So this is why you see the crazy shit. Siblings fucking each other's husbands and wives. Mothers fucking their daughters and sons, people. And then go to church and sing a song. This is why you see this. Siblings stalking their siblings, stealing. This is why you see it. Church folks or claiming to be whatever that are actually dark witches and warlocks because they're still in that energy. This is why you see it. It's connected to that slavery because it's still fear that's driving, that trauma, the abandonment, the betrayals, selling away your kids so you can have one more bowl of beans for the week, sacrificing your daughter and son in slavery to the motherfucker so y'all can have the better shack and shit, bitch, outside, whatever. And people are still doing it. My family doing it. A lot of families are, but it's covered up very sophisticatedly, if that's even a word. Okay? Through religion primarily and communal narcissism. But that other stuff, this is why there's such a diligence of trying to silence it and hide it. Because it's bringing up all those wounds. The ancestors are working so hard. The higher realms, they're pushing it through. But it takes bold and courageous individuals that are willing to, just like the old days. Just like them ragtag teams back in the day. Same difference. It's the same. Them revolutionaries, them far and them few and them in-betweens. Because it sure wasn't everybody. Some people were too cowardly. was always the few that knew that they were going to have to give it all they had, come hell or high water. And that it was a possibility that they were going to die for the cause in the name of freedom. Because injustice was injustice, okay? But now we need to go beyond even that. Now it's the healing. See, they fought. But now it's the healing of the wounds that are there. Even long past slavery in that sense, I should say. Slavery in that sense being no longer. But now it's time for the actual healing. And since there's such a resistance within the culture, this is why when individuals start healing and waking up, they disconnect. Because it's the culture that usually is resisting the most. And then they're pushing back and trying to push you against the wall and trying to squelch you and silence you, so they have to be put in their place. Because though they don't have to heal if they don't want to, it's a violation to try to stop you. Because there's going to be some that are just like you, collective, that opt to actually see it through. Even if it meant cutting people off and walking away for your sanity, for your peace, for your health and well-being, for your safety, because they're still locked in that slavery trauma. They're still there. They just have on fancy outfits and, fancy toys and fancy things, but their behavior, their choices, and their decisions and actions proves differently. Them going to church and going to a Reiki center and quoting something and posting something doesn't change that. Them trying to copycat everything a divine being doing doesn't change that. Because it's their behavior towards the divine being that is proving the fact that they're still in that energy. So if you know and you see and you sense individuals there, you can't pull them out of that. It's for you to make note of it and move on. Okay? All right, you guys. Namaste.